Morning.
Good morning.
Welcome back. Last Wednesday, we spoke about your partner perhaps not being on the same conscious parenting path as you and the challenges that might arise and how you may feel about that. So today, even though that is a huge topic, we thought we'd delve into just one key area, and that is, it's not really your partner who's triggering you, who's making you feel the way that you feel.
Oh, Jo, what are you meaning by that?
That's
oh my
crazy,
goodness.
isn't it?
That is crazy. But the reason that we say it's not actually your partner is because we have a thing in Fast EFT where we talk about when you're born, the stage is set. So you come in as a little baby and your parents have their operating system, like they have their way of being, and you just come in and you start using your 5 senses to navigate the world. Now, what are those 5 senses? We've got touch, we've got visuals, we've got auditory, so sounds, we've got taste, we've got smell. And this is really how your little baby self, your little 1-year-old self, your little 2-year-old self, all the way up to your, nearly 50-year-old self, like me, is navigating her world from her perspective or his perspective. So everything that comes at you from the outside world is part of those 5 senses. And, then there's the realm of like other senses, like, intuitive senses and all those kinds of things. But we're going to stick to the first, like the five today. And so what we mean by it's not really your partner triggering you, and this is a huge thing, is it's your partner, if you on occasion can still find that amazing love that you share together, then you know that inside they have a beautiful spirit, a beautiful soul. I mean, if I talk about your children, you can probably find that more easily. It's like their soul, their spirit, who they are is beautiful and amazing. But on the days when we can't actually find that feeling about our partner, then we start to see them in a different light. But what we mean is you're starting to use your 5 senses to hear something in their voice. So for me, the tone of my husband's voice. So I'm just feeling the world just like I did as a child when I would hear my father's voice, which often could be quite what would we say? Commanding would be a nice term for it. And I used to get quite scared around my father's voice quite often. So I had a lot of what we call in Fast EFT proofs and references about loud voices, and I'd kind of learnt to link being scared to loud voices. Therefore, my husband's voice really triggered me. Now, these can be linked to any kinds of visuals. So, Jo, because you the look on someone's face.
The look on someone's face more so than like words. So it's more visuals, like body language for me, like leaning in and being, looking up and being bigger.
Yes.
And the look on someone's face. Yeah. Sit tiny little movements, like even a certain, a tut or even a frown. Yeah,
the rolling the eyes, when your teenager rolls their eyes at you and you feel that feeling inside of you. Or another one is maybe you had parents who were really depressed a lot, so you might remember them like sitting like this and in their chair. And if you ever see your husband actually sit, even if it's just for a second or so in that particular position, there will be a trigger going off inside of you. But this is why we're saying it's not your husband, it's how he is moving, and it's something inside of you. So there was a lady on one of the mentoring calls with my mentor, Robert, and he has a beard, and he kept going like this all the time with his beard. And she said, oh my God, I just kept getting so triggered. And because she was coming from, we're going to get into that, like not being self-responsible and not understanding that it's the behavior that's triggering her, she did what we do with our partners. She said, you're the one triggering me. She wasn't making the distinction between you're the one triggering me and this movement that he was doing on his beard. But when she was asked, what is it about me that's triggering you? And she started thinking about it, and this is a really good thing to ask yourself with your partner, like, what is it about him right now that's triggering me? Is it his tone of voice? Is it the way he's sitting? Is it the way he's using his facial expressions? Maybe it's just the way he raises his eyebrows. Or oh my goodness, for
smell.
me, it could be smell, could be taste. One of the big ones for me was when someone turns around and walks away from me. Oh, that was a big trigger, especially if I'm talking to them. So these are all things that happened to you as a child, and you made them mean different things.
So that's a big trigger for you because that happened to you as a child. You'd be talking to them or trying to feel understood or express yourself, and they turn around and walk away from you?
Yes. So these behavior, yeah, totally. It's always coming from your past. So this is why we explain all this. It seems like simple stuff, but it isn't actually your partner. It's your five senses. And so
this is why you can have, say you have 10 people in a room, and one person is up the front presenting or speaking, and a couple of people one person gets triggered by something that the person presenting speaks about. How come only 1 in 10 people get triggered in that moment? Because that one person has a different past to the other 9 people in the room.
Yes, and the example with the beard thing, the lady said, oh my God, that's just like my grandfather. So she had a grandfather who she really was afraid of and didn't have a good connection with. And so when she saw Robert doing this, inside of her, she was starting to get nervous and starting to get scared. And she did, but see, unless we ask the questions, we can't find these links back.
And we recognize that, like, that awareness to pause in that moment and go, what's going on inside me? And that's what we mean when we talk about self-responsibility. And we ask that question when you join the group, and we've noticed and thank you for your honesty for those people who have trouble saying yes to that, and they'll say yes/no, because it is a huge thing. But we recognize that you're here and you're interested in the work and learning to become self-responsible.
Yeah. So another concept in Faster EFT is the lower model of the world and the upper model of the world. And in this group, because we ask you that question, that's the first question, that shows that we're a group about living in the upper model of the world. So what's your understanding of that, Jo?
So this is about in the past, when my kids triggered me, my partner triggered me, I'm making it about them. You're doing this to me. For good example is, for many years, even when I had my amazing 3 children, on Mother's Day I would choose to get upset and cry about the mother, that the relationship I had with my mother, and that is putting the blame on her, giving my power away to her. And then when I finally got self-responsible about that and recognized what I was doing, I could shift my focus and focus on the amazing things, my amazing children, on Mother's Day, rather than continue to blame someone, something, even something, job, government, loads of anything, anyone, anything is outside of me. I am not being self-responsible, and more importantly, I am totally giving my power away.
Yeah. And so there's another step here in shifting yourself into the upper model of the world. And the upper model of the world is when you, again, realize that you're coming from your 5 senses in every moment. It's the only reason that something bothers you. And so in that scenario with Jo and her mum, she could actually just kind of say, oh, okay, you could put on kind of like a happy face and still in your mind be going over the thing. So on the outside, it could look like Jo is, she could make that kind of decision to be happy around her kids. But if that is still bothering her inside here, it means that she's still entertaining it, because you can be in the lower model of the world just inside your thoughts. And this is why if you wake up in the morning and you're hashing around old and redundant and recycled thoughts that are just not going anywhere, then if you want to live in the upper model of the world, the next thing is you've got to have a commitment to doing something about it. And that is like tapping and releasing it, or I used to say the Ho'oponopono mantra. No, Jo's used that one as well. So that we're releasing that feeling. And there's a tap. If you're new to this group, there's a tapping video that I've done that you can tap in the heat of the moment, and that includes thoughts about an argument that you had with your husband yesterday, because when you're living in the lower model of the world, nothing creative comes out of that model. It just, you're just rehashing. If there's anger, which there usually is, because that's what's behind blaming somebody else, or there's fear, then everything that comes out of that comes from that fear, the lack, the anger, those things. So it takes, to move to the upper model of the world, there has to be an action to actually release it, to change how you're operating. So I hope that makes sense.
Also, because when we're going through those thoughts, usually, or this is the way for me, I'm analysing the situation, because that's going to make it better for me. I'm going to work through it until I recognise that I'm right and he's wrong, because that's going to fix everything, isn't it?
Oh, that's going to really make sure that you never get in a power struggle ever again. Yeah. And this is I convinced myself of this too for over 20 years. Until I got to Fast Truth Tea, because stepping into this model, Robert said an amazing thing yesterday. He said one of his first ladies that he mentored said that when you start to get self-awareness, it's like, what did she say? I've lost it now. But it's like I say, you want to punch someone in the face. It's great, but first, it's like you don't want to hear it, actually, because I'll find it and write it in the bottom, because it's gone now. But it's like you get a bit angry, because you've got to shift out of it. It's like you've got to go from being a child to a grown-up, and there's a part of you that's a rebellious teenager that doesn't want to do it. You still want to be right. And yet now it's only you doing it to you. You haven't got, you've got your partner you could keep fighting with for the rest of your life and trying to be right, or you can start shifting it.
And the shifting, so it doesn't stop there. Like, once you shift, then the creative solution part of your mind opens up, and you may be able to approach your partner and have conversations, calm conversations, about what you would like, what differences you would like in what you're doing together. But while you're triggered, it's very difficult to have a conversation.
Yeah, and I was just thinking about our first thing that we talked about here, is that just to start saying to your husband, instead of saying, using labels like you're an a-hole, or you're a prick, or you're a wanker, not that I would have ever used any of those.
You're being
not.
very gentle.
Yes, yes. Like, these are labels, these are diagnoses of another person, and nobody likes to be labeled or diagnosed, even if it's like you're shy or you're extrovert, introvert. Like, we labels, really limit us and they limit our mind as well. So, but by naming the trigger, you're going to start shifting it. If you start saying things like, oh, that is your tone of voice right there, as you go through this process, if you just say that, even if you just say it in your mind, if your husband might not be ready to hear that, he might still get defensive, or your wife, but you can start saying, oh, your tone of voice, that's what's triggering me. It's your tone of voice. Oh, it's the look on your face. Because at least then you're realizing that it's associated with your past and nothing to do with them actually, and that you can shift it. Yeah.
Yeah.
I just want to get
Yeah, sure. And I'm feeling, rather than you are, I'm feeling, and then you can start to make the links back to your own childhood or past, where the triggers came from.
Yeah, and I always say to everyone in the tap commune when they come on the tapping calls, I cannot trigger you. My job is to, shift triggers. So we talk about triggers a lot and we release triggers, but in the heat of the moment, your mother-in-law, your mother, your father, your, boyfriend, your partner, your kids,
children,
they can all trigger you more. And if you can learn to shift and release the emotion that comes up in that moment, and this took me a long time to do, but I want to show you a post, because I needed help in the beginning. That's why I worked with practitioners in the beginning. But this is what one of the ladies posted in our group.
So that'll be so excited.
Oh, is it backwards?
Yeah, it's backwards.
Can everyone read backwards?
Tapped through some pretty intense shit today, and you'll have to show it to me. And the feeling of not retreating into old behaviours is so freaking freeing.
Yes.
Yay.
So on the other side of a big trigger around a tone of voice, or around the roll of the eyes, or around some kind of behavior, which is really what's triggering you, this is what is there. Freaking freeing. It's freeing, because if you can tap through that and tap it away and release and let it go, it will not bother you in the same way ever again. And this is phenomenal. It's phenomenal. It'll get less and less and less every time you do it, and it's better. It's better than anything. The tapping in the heat of the moment.
Yeah.
And there's a video about it in the group.
And then come to creative solutions.
Yes. So I think we've covered everything.
I think we have.
Yeah.
It's a really, really big one. So we honour you for being here and coming on this journey with us. Having the women in our course group, it's honouring to see these women turn up and be honest and courageous about the shit. When you face this stuff, you're facing your own behaviour that you may not be very proud of.
Yes, totally. And I can laugh now because I've been tapping on myself for 5 years, but some of the new people turning up, I remembered that. Luckily I don't feel the emotional charge around the person I used to be, because it's long gone. And I hope that for everybody else that comes and experiences the tapping with us and keeps moving through their stuff. And Jo and I always say, don't call this a magic pill. But really, in some ways, if I could shift from being this anxious, overthinking, overanalyzing, people pleaser, never saying no when I wanted to, all of these things, fighting with my husband quite regularly, all of this stuff, that I do not do any of that hardly ever anymore. It's just a miracle. So if I could do that in 5 years, and I came to this work when I was 42, it's pretty, and you've got similar stories, Jo. It's taken us a while to shift all the layers of programming. because there was a lot there. And I'd made up a lot more stories about, how I wasn't good enough. I'd added to it.
Yeah.
So-
we keep replaying. When we keep replaying the same story over and over in our brain,
Yeah.
we strengthen the neural pathways, and it's so easy to go back to that story over and over and strengthen it more, and so the cycle continues.
Yes. And I was listening to one guy this morning, and he actually said that if you've got information, like if you're tapping on yourself and you can actually just use 2% of the things that you know to help yourself or to help another person, then that's an amazing thing. Just 2%. And I thought, wow, that is really cool. Like we're just sharing a tiny little bit of what's helped us to shift things. And it seems so simple, but if you just do this on a daily basis to recognize that it's not them, it's what they're doing, what's the tone of their voice, what's their behavior, what's their face doing, how is that related back to your past. And we go more into that in the calls, finding those things out. We change memories, we do all sorts of other things. You've got to come on the course to find all that stuff out and to do the really big shifts inside of yourself. But it's really fascinating, amazing work. And then you start to, become more curious and creative as opposed to reactive. And that is just
Amazing.
magic.
Yes.
Magic. Yeah.
Yes.
So we'll leave it there, shall we?
Yes, we
thank
will.
you
Thank
so much.
you for joining us. And if you have any questions, ask away in the comments below. And we'll see you again next Wednesday.
Yes.
Have a
we
great
will.
week.
See ya.